I'm going to start by just saying I love sugar. Yes, I said it. I love it. My kids know that after Halloween, it's in their best interest to hide their candy from me. Sweet treats are one small example of the way food can be associated with fun, celebration, joy, and comfort. Our first speaker this morning once said, "Food is love, food is joy, food is culture." But like every great heroic fantasy film, the light always is balanced by some form of dark. While sugar can inspire joy, it can also bring addiction. Sugar offers the body an easily accessible form of fuel for physical activity, but it can also contribute to chronic disease risks such as type 2 diabetes and obesity. The human body is beautifully complicated, and Dr. Who's research aims to help the world understand a bit more about why each of our bodies recognizes and utilizes something like sugar so differently. Dr. Who is trying to uncover the mysteries of human metabolism and offer insights into how sugar, specifically, is connected to health outcomes. What is the role of genetics or lifestyle? It's complicated, and it will always be complicated. Dr. Who may not tell us exactly how much sugar is healthy, nor will he be able to promise that if guidelines are adopted, that health will change. His research helps us peel back one layer of the conversation related to sugar consumption and health. Dr. Who is the Frederick J. Stair Professor of Nutrition and Epidemiology at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health and Professor of Medicine at Brigham and Women's Hospital at Harvard Medical School. His work has focused on factors related to sugar, metabolism, and chronic disease risk associated with sugar intake in the diet. Please help me give a warm Gustavus welcome to Dr. Who.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm so honored to be here, and I want to thank the organizers for inviting me to this really wonderful conference. And I'm very excited about the programs in the next 2 days. I want to thank Stephanie for your kind introduction. Yesterday, on the way from the airport to the hotel, she took me to the largest candy store in Minnesota. That's really a perfect preparation for my lecture today. And I want to thank you for the naturally sweetened welcome. So let me start with some sweet or not too sweet words on sugar. I think everyone knows this quote, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. Sugar, the substance that turns ordinary into extraordinary. Without sugar, the world would be a bitter place. How many people would agree with that? Okay. Sugar whisper promises it cannot keep. And this is my favorite quote. Sugar is the next tobacco without doubt. It should be taxed just like tobacco. How many of you know Jamie Oliver, who is a celebrity chef in the UK? But this is my most favorite quote on sugar. Life is uncertain. Eat dessert first. So on a more serious note, sugar has been implicated in the global epidemic of obesity and obesity-related chronic diseases. As you can see in the figure, in the last several decades, the prevalence of obesity has increased dramatically all over the world, even in low and middle income countries. In parallel with the obesity epidemic, there has been a huge increase in prevalence of diabetes. Currently, we have almost 400 million people with diabetes, and this number is expected to double in the next 2 to 3 decades. And this is the obesity map in the US, and Overall, 40% of US adults have obesity, and the obesity prevalence varies across different regions of the country. As you can see that Colorado is the only state with the green color. It means that the prevalence of obesity in Colorado is below 25%. So the question is, why not Minnesota? Why Colorado? We don't know. And this is the consumption of sugary beverage map for young kids in the US. Can you believe that almost 60% US children aged 1 to 5 years consumed at least one SSB in the past 7 days? So here we're talking about toddlers, infants, who consume SSBs on a regular basis. And you can see there is a correspondence, close correspondence between those two maps. The states or the regions with high consumption of SSBs also have high prevalence of obesity. We are living in the obesogenic food environment dominated by ultra-processed foods, or UPFs. Those foods are typically high in sugar, unhealthy fats, sodium, and additives. They are engineered for overconsumption. They are aggressively marketed, especially to children. They are cheap, convenient, and they're everywhere. So I think the food environment is a huge factor for our current obesity epidemic. When we talk about sugar, we have to distinguish different types of sugars. We have monosaccharides like glucose, fructose, or disaccharides like sucrose or table sugar, lactose. High fructose corn syrups is a mixture of glucose and fructose from cornstarch. Even though high fructose corn syrup has slightly higher amount of fructose, it's metabolically not very different from table sugar or canned sugar. We have natural sugars in fruits and vegetables and dairy, and we also have a lot of added sugars in packaged or processed foods. There's no question that American diet is too sweet. According to the National Health Nutrition Survey, Americans consume on average 17 teaspoons of added sugar per day, 17 teaspoons. That's equivalent to 270 calories. Most of those added sugars come from beverages, especially sugar-sweetened beverages or SSBs. 1 can of soda contains 10 teaspoons of sugar, almost 140 calories. In the US, sugar-sweetened beverages and other foods are sweetened by high fructose corn syrups because it's much cheaper and it's more abundant than canned sugar or table sugar. Besides sodas and fruit drinks, we also have energy drinks and sports drinks that contain large amount of added sugars. It's ironic that most of the sports drinks are consumed by those who do not play sports. In the past several decades, the portion size of sodas have been supersized. In the movie theater, you can get 64 ounces of soda. Do you know how many calories in 64 ounces of soda? Almost 800 calories. And how much time do you need to run to burn all those calories? 1 hour? 2 hours? It's at least 1.5 hours for most people. It's like running a half marathon to burn off those calories. Added sugars have been implicated in a wide range of health conditions, including dental caries, weight gain, obesity, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, cardiovascular disease, gout, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and even some cancers. Most of the evidence has come from epidemiological studies, this is a hierarchy of study designs in nutrition epidemiology. The highest level of evidence, of course, come from randomized clinical trials with hard clinical outcomes like heart attack or stroke or diabetes. But large long-term RCTs are typically not feasible because of the high cost, low compliance, and ethical concerns. So the next level of evidence comes from small randomized clinical trials with intermediate outcomes like body weight or blood sugar, or not carefully controlled prospective cohort studies. So when you have evidence from observational cohorts and small intervention trials with intermediate outcomes, we have to rely on certain criteria to make causal inference. So the Bradford-Hill criteria have been used in epidemiological studies to make causal inference, and those criteria were used in, for example, in drawing the causal relationship between smoking and lung cancer, and the intake of trans fat and coronary heart disease. Of course, we also have evidence from other types of studies, like case control studies, ecological studies, migration studies, and cross-sectional studies. But the rigor of the evidence from those types of studies is much less compared to randomized clinical trials or large prospective cohort studies. So today, the evidence I'm going to present mostly comes from those two types of studies. Because of the advances in omics technologies and big data analytics and AI, there has been a paradigm shift in nutrition research from the so-called black box epidemiology to systems epidemiology. This approach enables us to incorporate system biology tools like omics into large epidemiological studies and the intervention trials. It allows us to illuminate biological mechanisms, identify novel exposure and disease biomarkers, improve disease predictions, identify high-risk individuals and populations, and also identify new intervention targets. The nurses' health studies conducted at Harvard are one of the largest, longest-running cohort studies globally. The initial nurses' health study was established in 1976, almost 50 years ago. So next year we will celebrate a milestone, which is the 50-year anniversary of the original nurses' health study. Subsequently, nurses' health study 2 and the nurses' health study 3 cohorts were established. And the GUTS cohort include participants who are the children of nurses' health study 2. So we have multi-generational data which allow us to examine intake of nutritional factors during pregnancy or among mothers on their offspring's health. Over the years, we have collected extensive data using questionnaires. We have collected hundreds, thousands of biospecimen samples, including urine, blood, and stool samples. And we have also collected geographic data and the environmental data. And we have documented hundreds of health outcomes and disease outcomes. Every 2 to 4 years, we have been collecting detailed data on diet, physical activity, sleep, psychosocial factors, physical function, and so on and so forth. Diet assessment is one of the most challenging aspects of cohort studies because there is no perfect way to measure diet in free living populations. We have been relying on the combination of different methods, including validated self-reported dietary questionnaires, combined with objective biomarkers to measure diet. Besides traditional dietary biomarkers, we have conducted extensive omics analysis, including genomics, metabolomics, metagenomics, and epigenomics. So incorporating the omics data into our large cohort studies allow us to better understand the biological mechanisms underlying the relationship between diet and disease outcomes. This is a meta-analysis we published recently. This meta-analysis includes 40 cohort studies conducted among children, 21 cohorts conducted among adults. The results are very consistent. What we found is that there is a consistent dose-response relationship between increased added sugar intake and the increased weight gain. In this meta-analysis, we also include 8 RCTs conducted among children, 16 RCTs conducted adults. Again, there is a strong, consistent evidence that SSBs promote weight gain in both children and adults. This is the largest intervention trial conducted in children. And in this study, more than 640 children were randomized to 2 groups, SSB group or sugar-free beverage group. The study design was very clever because the soda cans for the 2 groups look identical, so that most of the children couldn't tell which group they were in. So this is truly double-blinded intervention trial. The intervention lasted for 1.5 years. And you can see that at the end of the intervention, compared to the SSB group, the sugar-free group had significantly reduced incidence of childhood overweight and obesity. So this study provides very strong evidence that reducing SSB consumption could have significant benefits in reducing childhood obesity. In this meta-analysis, we summarize the findings from several large cohort studies. We found that overall 1 to 2 servings per day of SSBs is associated with 26% increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes. And this positive association remains significant even after adjustment for BMI and the total energy intake. SSB consumption is also consistent associated with increased risk of hypertension, coronary heart disease, stroke. And this is a very large study using data from NHANES, which is the national representative sample of the US adults. And we found a strong dose-response relationship between added sugar intake and the risk of cardiovascular mortality. As you can see that the increased risk start to take off around 10% of calories from added sugar. And the increased risk accelerated when the intake is above 20% of calories from added sugar. So compared to individuals who consume less than 10% of calories from added sugar, those who consume 10 to 25% of calories from added sugar had 30% increased cardiovascular mortality. For those who consume a lot of added sugar, almost 1/4 of their calories from added sugar, their risk of cardiovascular mortality was increased by almost 3-fold, even after taking into account wide range of cardiovascular risk factors. You may say there may be only a few people who consume so much added sugar. That's actually not true. If you look at NHANES data, large number of American adults, 5 to 10%, consume more than 20% of their calories from added sugar. SSB consumption has also been consistently associated with increased risk of fatty liver disease. So the metabolism of fructose is very different from glucose. Most of the fructose is actually metabolized in the liver, so it doesn't really increase your blood sugar rapidly. When the consumption of fructose is excessive, it can actually stimulate hepatic delovogenesis. It means that most of the excess fructose will be converted to fat in the liver. So that leads to increased liver fat content and increased production of triglycerides, which is a type of blood fat that has been associated with increased risk of diabetes, insulin resistance, and cardiovascular disease. And also, unlike glucose, fructose stimulates very minimum production of insulin or incretin like GLP-1. I think many of you are familiar with the GLP-1, the miracle GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic, which has been very effective in terms of weight loss. So too much fructose actually reduce or blunt the effects of GLP-1. And that lead to weak satiety signals and potentially increase your appetite and increase overconsumption. But different food sources of fructose can make a difference in terms of health outcomes. In this analysis, we found fructose from whole fruits is actually associated with lower risk of diabetes, but fructose from fruit juices and from SSBs is associated with increased risk. So it doesn't mean that fructose in whole fruits is beneficial. It just means that when you eat a whole fruit, it contains not just fructose, but also a large amount of fiber, antioxidants, polyphenols. So certainly it's better to eat whole fruits than drinking fruit juices. But added sugar is only a small piece of puzzle in the overall dietary pattern. So that's why in the recent study published in Nature Medicine, we identified optimal dietary patterns for healthy aging. Here, healthy aging is defined as composite phenotype that including 5 criteria. So you have to live to a certain age, of course, at least 70 years old. And also you have to be free of major chronic diseases like diabetes, cardiovascular disease, or cancer. Should have good cognitive function, good mental health, and a good physical function. So in our cohorts, only 10% of participants met those 5 criteria, only 10%. And what we want to do is to see what kind of dietary patterns can help participants or individuals to achieve healthy aging. So we examined 8 popular dietary patterns. So we have Mediterranean diet, alternative healthy eating index based on the dietary guidelines, the DASH diet, the MIND diet, the anti-inflammatory diet, anti-hyperinsulinemia diet, a planetary health diet, and also healthful plant-based diets. What we found is that all healthy dietary patterns are associated with great likelihood of healthy aging during 30 years follow-up. That's really good news. It means that there is no one-size-fits-all diet for healthy aging. The strongest benefit was observed for HCI, followed by anti-inflammatory diet and the planetary health diet, and also Mediterranean diet. Those are the foods we identified either increase the likelihood or decrease the likelihood of healthy aging. So we have the anti-aging foods like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, legumes, non-chain omega-3 fatty acids. The good news is that coffee and the tea are beneficial for prevention of chronic diseases and improving your likelihood of healthy aging. On the other side of the coin, we have foods that are associated with decreased likelihood of healthy aging. So you can see that sugar-sweetened beverages, fruit juices, sweets, and desserts, added sugar stand out as pro-aging foods. And of course, we also have other unhealthy foods in this column, such as refined grains and processed meats, too much sodium, too much trans fat. So clearly, we have pretty convincing evidence that some foods are beneficial for our health. Other foods, including added sugar or sugar-sweetened beverages, are harmful for our health. So as I mentioned earlier, the system epidemiological approach enables us to gain deeper insights into biological mechanisms, including metabolic pathways and genetic modulations, and also gut microbiome changes. And this approach goes beyond one-size-fits-all dietary guidelines and allow us to tailor dietary recommendations to your biology, your lifestyle factors, your cultural background. This is the foundation of precision nutrition and precision health. This is a study we published a while ago looking at the interplay or interactions between our genes and SSBs on obesity. So far, hundreds of genetic variants have been identified for obesity. So using some of those genetic variants, we calculated genetic risk score for obesity. So overall, each 10 risk allele is associated with twofold increased risk of obesity. And what's interesting is that for those who consume SSBs on a regular basis, at least 1 serving per day, their genetic risk of obesity is increased to fivefold. So it means that SSB consumption amplified your genetic risk of obesity. So all of us carry obesity genes, some obesity genes, but whether those genes are activated or not depends on our diet, including SSB consumption. This is the Michelangelo's original David. How many of you have seen it? Yeah. And 5 centuries later, this is the modern day David. I'm pretty sure they carry the same genes, right? Both are from Michelangelo, it's just in different era. And so even though they carry similar genes, because they live in different food environment, so they have very different body shapes. We know that the metabolism of sugar goes beyond calories. It's interesting that added sugar can actually stimulate the production of ghrelin, which is produced by stomach. It's a hunger hormone. So consuming too much added sugar may actually stimulate your appetite, increase your consumption. And also, as I mentioned earlier, too much sugar, especially fructose, block incretin response, and also promote oxidative stress and chronic low-grade inflammation. Chronic inflammation is the underlying pathophysiology for obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and even some cancers. And also too much added sugar, especially fructose, increase hepatic de novo lipogenesis and increase the production of uric acid. So hyperinsulinemic is the precursor to gout, which is a very painful inflammatory condition. So that's why drinking too much fructose, drinking too much soda is an important risk factor for gout. And also there is increasing evidence that added sugar can alter our gut microbiome composition. This study looked at the effect of SSB consumption on gut microbiome in a very large cohort, the Hispanic Community Health Study, or study of Latinos. There's 3 major findings from this study. One is that high SSB consumption is associated with higher abundance of fructose and the glucose utilizing bacteria species, which is not surprising. And the higher SSB consumption is associated with low abundance of short-chain fatty acid producers. Short-chain fatty acids are very important for our energy metabolism, for maintaining the integrity of our endothelium, especially for intestine. And another finding is that high SSB consumption is associated with increased harmful circulating small molecule metabolites, like branched-chain amino acids. Branched-chain amino acids in your blood have been strongly associated with increased risk of insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes. So in particular, frequent SSB consumers had significantly reduced microbial diversity, have increased pro-inflammatory bacteria species, decreased anti-inflammatory species. And this study shows that gut microbiome shifts could explain at least part of the detrimental effects of SSB consumption on diabetes risk. So the question is, how much is too much? The dietary guidelines for Americans and the WHO recommend less than 10% of daily calories from added sugar, and ideally is less than 5%. So if you consume a 2,000 calorie diet, it means that no more than 12 teaspoons per day, based on the 10% threshold. If you use the 5% threshold, it means that no more than 6 teaspoons per day. The American Heart Association recommends no more than 6 teaspoons of added sugar for women, 9 teaspoons for men. As I mentioned earlier, on average, Americans consume 17 teaspoons of added sugar per day. That exceeds all current guidelines. And a single soda already exceeds the American Heart Association recommended limits. And there is strong evidence that liquid calories are much worse than solid calories. Liquid calories are absorbed very rapidly, which lead to fast spikes in your blood glucose and blood sugar, and also fructose load to your liver. And because liquids do not trigger satiety and it bypass natural satiety cues, so it's very easy for you to add liquid calories on top of your diet. And also, liquid sugars can create greater metabolic stress. As mentioned earlier, excess fructose in liquid forms drives liver fat, triglycerides, and insulin resistance. And more importantly, the evidence for the harmful effects of SSBs is much stronger from epidemiological studies and the clinical studies compared to the solid sugars in foods. This doesn't mean you can eat solid sugar as much as you can. It just means that important public health priority is to reduce liquid sugars in our diet. Artificial sweeteners have been widely used to replace added sugars in foods and food products. And the common types of artificial sweeteners include aspartame, sucrose, saccharin, stevia. Stevia is a plant-based artificial sweetener. And those sweeteners are high-intensity sweeteners. They are 300 to 600 times sweeter than table sugar. Can you believe that? 300 to 600 times sweeter than table sugar. Because they contain 0 calories, so they don't raise your blood sugar directly. However, the use of artificial sweeteners remains highly controversial because there is mixed evidence or inconsistent evidence on appetite, weight management, and metabolic health. Some studies have shown even positive association between consumption of diet soda and the risk of diabetes and cardiovascular disease. And there is increasing evidence that some of the artificial sweeteners may have detrimental effects on your gut microbiome. So this is, again, I think a very controversial area, and that's the reason we shouldn't consider diet soda as a free pass, as a replacement for regular soda. Sugar alcohols have also been widely used in sugar-free foods and beverages. And it's interesting that even though it's called alcohols, those compounds are neither true sugars nor alcohols. So if you drink a lot of beverages with sugar alcohols, you're not going to get drunk. I'm pretty sure about that, because it doesn't contain any ethanol. The common types of sugar alcohols include erythritol, sorbitol, and xanthol. And they contain much lower amount of calories compared to added sugar. And also they stimulate minimal rise in blood sugar and insulin. So that's the reason they're very popular for sugar-free foods. And some of the sugar alcohols are metabolized by your gut bacteria. So for some individuals, this may cause some GI side effects, GI symptoms. So some people may not be tolerant of sugar alcohols. And there is some evidence that high erythritol is linked to increased cardiovascular disease, increased blood clotting. However, the evidence is very limited and very inconclusive at this point. So to reduce added sugar consumption, we need, of course, education and increasing awareness, but more importantly, we need policy solutions to create a healthier food environment. This includes taxation of unhealthy food like sodas, restricting marketing of unhealthy food, especially to children, and food labeling. Everyone should read food labels. I don't know how many of you read food labels. They will tell you not just total amount of sugar, but more important, the amount of added sugar. Yesterday, when we stopped at the candy store, we look at hundreds of different kinds of sugary sodas, and when I look at the food label, one of them contains 44 grams of sugar, just a small bottle of soda. And so 44 grams sugar is how many teaspoons? 11 teaspoons of sugar. So if you come to my home, I serve you a glass of water and then add 11 teaspoons of sugar. How do you feel? You must be disgusted by that, right? But those beverages contain huge amount of sugar, and most people don't know it. And food labels, like the warning labels and the front package labels, have been widely used in European countries, in Latin America, but not in the US at this point. I think those warning labels are very useful for consumers to make more informed decisions when they purchase certain foods. And soda tax has been implemented in many countries. For example, in 2014, Mexico implemented national excess tax, and that led to a significant reduction in purchase of regular soda and a significant increase in purchase of bottled water. In Chile, in 2014, excise tax was implemented combined with warning labels and the marketing restriction. That led to significant reduction in sugary beverage purchase and the industry reformulation. In 2018, the UK implemented tiered tax for sugary beverages. So the higher amount of added sugar, the higher tax. And that led to dramatic reduction in sugar sold in soft drinks and also major reformulation of those soft drinks. Only a few cities in the US have implemented soda tax. In Philadelphia, in 2017, it implemented a beverage excess tax on both sugary beverages and diet beverages. This tax led to a significant reduction in sugary beverage sales and also increased revenue for pre-K and for parks. So those are the key lessons from soda tax policies. Taxations reduce consumption of sugary beverages. The impact is greater with higher taxes. That's very similar to the impact of tobacco tax. Industry reformulation can achieve large sugar reduction even before products reach consumers. Front-of-pack warning labels and the marketing restrictions can amplify the effects of soda tax. Earmarking revenues for social programs can increase public support and also equity. And finally, of course, we need sustained monitoring to evaluate long-term health benefits of those policies. Before I close, I just want to briefly mention that nutrition communication is critically important, and especially in this day of age, when social media dominate our communication space, both professionally and personally. And 20 years ago, our department created a website called Nutrition Source, and it has become one of the most popular digital platforms to disseminate evidence-based or science-based nutrition messages to the general public, to health professionals, and to policymakers. Last year, nearly 20 million people visited this website. In the meantime, we created a healthy eating plate to guide healthy eating habits. And this plate has been translated into 35 different languages. It has been widely used as a nutrition education tool in schools, in hospitals, and in workplace. So this healthy eating plate emphasizes fruits and vegetables, whole grains, healthy protein, and also healthy beverages. So I think this is an important strategy for us to translate scientific evidence created in the ivory tower to general public. So finally, I just want to acknowledge the dedications and contributions of numerous colleagues at Harvard and the Brigham Women's Hospital who are running the large cohort studies, and also to our collaborators for their support over the years. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you, Dr. Hu. That was really a wonderful place to start. I should have mentioned at the outset that we do have a glossary of sugar-related terms at the back of your program too, so if you want to see more about the definitions of some of these terms, or if you want to learn more about the glycemic index, you can do that. Remember too, as you take a break, please send your questions for our speakers. We're going to introduce the next speaker, and then we'll have a question session. You can send those again to nobelconference@gustavus.edu. At this point, it's my pleasure to welcome to the stage